Hi, I'm Andrea Bogart of Lawrence Technological University's Detroit Center for Design and Technology and founder of Embrace Creatives. I'm thrilled you could attend our last event for Yeah, What Lester Said, an exhibit and panel on sustainability and design. Lester Brown has been called one of the great pioneer environmentalists and one of Marquis' Who's Who 50 Great Americans. Earning his master's degree in agricultural economics from the University of Maryland in 1959, he went on to pioneer the concept of sustainable development. Climate change is no longer an abstract idea that might happen sometime in the future. It is upon us now, and its effects can be felt via enormous storms, serious drought, and massive flooding here in the Midwest. By 2010, rising oceans are estimated to force as many as 2 billion residents of coastal areas worldwide to migrate towards higher ground, and agricultural yields in huge swaths of the Midwest will decline by 50% or more if we don't cut emissions. Collaborating with the American Institute of Architects in Michigan, 2030 District, the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, community leaders, activists, artists, green infrastructure experts, and architects, Lawrence Technological University's Detroit Center for Design and Technology, and their curatorial partner, Embrace Creatives, are bringing this absolutely necessary conversation to the forefront before it's too late. Sorry about this. Technology. The DCDT has put together 2.5 months of programming along with an art exhibit, which is currently live on our website, detroit.design-lester. Please visit our page to view the past events and enter the art gallery and architecture board exhibit. Everything is free and open to the public. In this, the last program for the Detroit Center for Design and Technology's Yeah, What Lester Said Climate Change exhibit and symposium, we present the path to sustainable fashion, where we will discuss sustainability in textiles and garment manufacturing in light of COVID-19. Moderator Sarah Ayers, along with her guests Tanya Marcos and Shayla Johnson, will discuss possible next steps towards rethinking practices and future textiles garment manufacturing. Topics will include supply chain, sourcing sustainable goods, the future of American-made products, and how this pandemic will change everything. It's time to begin, so I'd like to introduce you to our moderator, Sarah Ayers. Sarah is the founder of William & Bonnie, established her cut and sew workroom in 2014, focusing on small-scale production and triple bottom line sustainable practices. Ayers has worked on limited run and custom garment production for both luxury brands and local designers. In fall 2017, Ayers launched an alterations boutique featuring women's and men's garment alterations, as well as a curated selection of men's accessories located in the Fisher Building in Detroit, Michigan. More information can be found on her Instagram at william.n.bonnie page. Thank you very much. I'm going to introduce Sarah now.
Good morning, everyone. I will start obviously by introducing myself. I'm Sarah. Andrea did a pretty good job at what I've done. So I have had William & Bonnie since 2014. We've done everything from alterations to custom work, cut and sew, limited run, kind of all over the map, sewing and textile work, which is actually how I met Shayla in the first place. So I'd like to just take a second and let everyone introduce themselves before we dive into the questions. I think that we can all describe what we do ourselves the best. So I'd like to open the floor to Shayla and Tanya.
Hello. As she mentioned, my name is Shayla. I am the owner of Scarlet Crane Creations. I have a studio over in Detroit where we print textiles that are used to create a line of home decor and accessories that are offered in various stores around the city, as well as online. One of the main areas that we focus on is screen printing onto all natural fabrics with water-based inks. And So the studio is equipped to print yardage, and that fabric, as I said, is used not only for the line of home decor, but also for other businesses, fashion designers, and those that need specialized upholstery pieces. There's a big range. So that's our focus.
Good morning. My name is Tanya Marcos Vano. I'm the Development and Operations Manager for Pure Michigan Business Connect, which is a unit located inside of the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. Our focus is to connect it's demand-based, and we connect local and global purchasers with Michigan supply base. And what I have a major focus personally on the cut and sew industry and working with our partners like the Design Creative Studios and Detroit Sewn and Isaac, Detroit is the New Black, etc. So we do have a vested interest in the cut and sew industry and look forward to this conversation.
Great, thank you guys. So we touched a little bit about what we all do within the textile and garment manufacturing world. So one of the big questions, and I know one that's on the topic or on the minds of everyone that seems to be doing a panel is, what, and it's really different with the two of you when I think of one of you as a creator, one is helping with sourcing. So this question's kind of interesting to me, but the question that we had posed is, what have you been creating throughout COVID-19 and in what way has it changed the way you work? But I think, Tanya, for you, maybe the bigger question is, what have you seen changing throughout this and in the way you work, maybe in terms of your suppliers or supporting the cut and sew industry in Detroit?
Sure. So COVID-19 has definitely exposed some issues in the cut and sew industry, most specifically on the supply chain. As many companies were looking to pivot, making the PPE, there was a severe shortage in material and getting access to it, with most of it coming from Asia. This reminded the cut and sew industry of the importance of, localizing the supply chain. And what has been nice is because we've been, so the PMBC and my team working alongside Jen Garino at Isaac, Karen Buscemi from Detroit Sewn, we created the Michigan Fashion Council back in January of 2020. We meet monthly to kind of discuss best practices, challenges, brainstorming solutions. And just as a background, so that the purpose of that council is to establish Michigan as a competitive preferred destination of excellence for accessible, responsible, rapid apparel. And then we're advocates for the cut and sew industry. So I say all that to say, because we had this cohort, we were able to leverage those relationships and, kind of think through how we can get big bulk of this material, utilizing not just those relationships, but with the relationships outside of those, like our friends from, Dan Gilbert's business, his name, the company just eluded me, but using those kinds of, Bedrock, thank you, to gain access to the shortage, the supply chain that we needed.
So Shayla, obviously you're a much smaller, independent designer. Were there any changes that you noticed? Were you still able to access your materials? Was there a delay? As somebody that's working singularly, I imagine that your resources are a little different. Did it change the way in which you work, or you order your supplies or access your materials?
Yeah, well, I was just thinking as Tanya was talking, really for me, it was about the relationships that I had with my existing vendors, and they are small as well and mostly local here in Michigan. And I have to say that is why I've been able to get ink ordered and delivered fairly quickly, even in the midst of the pandemic. They were shut down for perhaps a month or a month and a half, and got back up and running fairly quickly. And so for me, it's mostly fabric and ink. I have a lot of other equipment, and it needs to be maintained, and I can do that myself as well. So low maintenance setup is key, I would say, for me. And yeah, having quite a few different vendors for the fabric and sources for fabric has also helped because others were down and then others were operational, fully operational. So I had a choice and a good selection.
So I think the logical follow-up to that would be, now that we've kind of seen the way that it works under crisis and our access points and the demand and our ability to meet or not meet demand, do you anticipate any changes with how we start to acquire materials? Tanya, do you see that maybe it'll follow more of like Shayla's model? We're trying to work local and then, focusing on developing maybe local mills and that sort of thing? Or do you think that, like, how, I guess, in what ways do you see it changing the larger market for sourcing?
Honestly, I hope it does change. We need to attract this type of manufacturing back to the States, but we need more incentives to do so. So I think, by incentives, I'm not just talking like local government incentives. I'm talking also, the contract from the consumer saying that they're willing to spend the extra money to have the production here in the States, so that it can make for the manufacturers, the production's more affordable. Because that's the biggest pushback, right? Is the cost to do business locally and keep your supply chain locally. So I think it's going to be important that the consumer is willing. So that the idea of like the fast fashion, I think, is starting to kind of leave, at least for now. So if we can kind of focus more on that, that demand on demand kind of production, I think we can do it, but we need to focus our efforts.
Certainly. So kind of following along that line of thought, and American made and encouraging people to buy locally, as someone that has done local cut and sew, and I think you're totally spot on, it's the price point. I think that people have a hard time wrapping their head around, oh, well, I can buy this shirt for $5. Why would I spend $50? Never mind the fact that it's supporting my neighbor and that money's going into the local economy. I don't think a lot of people dive that far into what that money means and what it means when it's spent locally, when you're supporting local. And I think one of the observations I saw, one of the interesting things that I saw, were the number of people that wanted to make masks and had no idea how hard it was going to be. And it was almost this great, and this is gonna make me sound like a monster, but it was like this really kind of beautiful moment where I was like, finally, maybe people will value like the skill that goes into it. Like, yeah, sure, most people can learn how to make a mask, but it might take you 2 hours when it could take me 5 minutes, and you're paying for the skill and you're paying for the experience. And so, the number of messages that I got that was like, Sarah, I can't thread my machine, or like, what's going on? Why don't I have this ball of thread here? It was almost like this moment of validation as somebody that's sewn for a long time to be like, and this is why it should be valued. This is and so hopefully there's some recognition in the work that goes along with that, that I think that a lot of people can finally see. Shayla, since you are a local maker, have you noticed any shift? Like, did you have a lot of people suddenly reaching out to you to make things or ask if you were making masks, or did it change the way people reach out to you?
Well, it was expected that I would make masks since I print textiles, and I was quick to just emphasize that I print home decor weights, and it's not appropriate to put on your face. I honestly was just so exhausted. I had not the bandwidth to go there. And so I did get a few requests, but it was more just because I have fabric all around me. And I like that you mentioned that, because I am just paying more attention to more of the commercial sector and retail, for instance. There's a big push to do American made and support handmade, right? From Amazon, handmade, and even Walmart has an open call right now for American made products if you want to pitch to them. And I was just pleasantly surprised, and I was in on that call yesterday, which is really interesting. They were very clear about production and the fact that, yeah, we know that if we're going to solicit products from makers, that the price point is going to vary. And we're expecting that, we're welcoming that. And I was just like grateful. I'm hoping that that wave will continue, across the country. So that educating, right, and people sort of coming to the understanding of the process and what's all involved is so important.
Tanya, do you notice any shift in terms of, I guess, when I think of unemployment rates and I think of demands and American made, do you see any sort of specialized focus on training people for the cut and sew industry? Like, I know that Isaac is doing an apprenticeship program and trainings and things like that, but do you think that there seems to be a larger interest in supporting that kind of work now? More of like the skilled trades to get people back into the workforce?
There's definitely a big increase in the training for skilled trades. We see that across the board. I think what you're going to start seeing a little bit more of is training these folks on, the new technology, automation, digitization. So you're going to start seeing a little bit more of that. And I think what that's going to do is open up these cut and sew open up the cut and sew industry to do more quickly, and not have so much on the back end as far as so the cost up front is going to be pretty expensive, and to train the people. So I think that's kind of where those incentives are going to help these companies pivot. But on the back end, it's much more sustainable because they don't have all the waste at the other end, and it's much more efficient as far as people and time. So I think you're going to start seeing some of that movement, which we already are. I mean, there's a great Guild Form, which is a new company here in Metro Detroit, who does that kind of work, but she is focused solely on jewelry. But it's a super sweet platform that she's developed. So, and Isaac, is fully aware of that. But what Isaac is doing is helping to get in and train the workforce that's already on the ground. And I think we're going to need to start seeing some more of that. In the higher education institutions around here, I think recognize that, like Lawrence Tech University and CCS and Michigan State and Eastern Michigan. So you're starting to see those universities kind of embracing more of this.
Sure. So this question was actually posed to me, but it kind of rides along the lines in which we're speaking. What problems do you think are the easiest to solve? Is there one thing that jumps out to you that you think this is the moment, let's grab this, or this is something that's doable without having to consider like a 5-year timeline or institutional changes? Is there something that you think we could solve quickly?
I would say training. We've got the experts already here and local. So if we can utilize them to train the new staff, I think we're going to do ourselves some justice. In addition to the training, I think, leveraging the partnerships and kind of working as a cohesive industry to kind of share resources. I think there's an opportunity there as well. And then the last thing I'll say about that is the universities, really leveraging what these universities already have set up on their campus that can help us as an industry train individuals going into this or needing to, change or renew their skills. I think there's an opportunity there as well.
I think that's really interesting. I had a couple of interns, and they came from different universities and both did fashion. And I thought, like, the one woman came to me and she had like this amazing skill set, like she understood the different types of stitches, and she understood the technical part of it, and she could get on a machine and she could do things. Was she an expert? No, but she had this base understanding that made it easier to communicate to me what it is that she was looking for, or ask the questions that she needed to ask as somebody that wants to be a designer. The other girl had zero hands-on experience. Like, she could drape fabric beautifully and her sketches were beautiful, but she didn't have any of that that tangible skill. And I remember thinking at that moment, and her response to me when I asked, like, you don't sew at all? And she's like, no, I'm a designer. And it really struck me because it's like, you have to have that understanding. Like, you have to be able to articulate to your team what that looks like. And if you watch any of those behind the scenes runway shows, like, those designers are hands-on and they're doing those tweaks and they're doing that. And I think that there's a level of understanding and a level of appreciation, if nothing else, even going to be a designer, that having those skills is really important. And I think it should be an important part of that, and really natural part of that curriculum. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea of using sort of the low-hanging fruit and what we have already at just our disposal. For instance, I've been able to meet students, and they've been very much interested in the process of printing textiles, but also design students, fashion design students. So just being able to work with, the local universities is been really of benefit for me, at least. And I look forward to the training of more talent. I personally have to just do one-offs, and I'm not able to afford big minimums. And so I've had, colleagues, and even working with you, Sarah, was great because I could just get an order, right, and send it straight over to you if it were 5 or, 50. So yeah, we've had to really be careful about specifying small batch, runs, because we'll get an order of, 100 yards or so, and that's really at the most that I could do. So yeah, I really wish there was a solution for smaller batch production.
Let's see. So Shayla, I'm going to touch a little bit like in design and hands-on and the interest that people have expressed in your work. Like you're talking about, like working with students, and there's this interest in design and printing and things. You mentioned earlier that you're going to be doing video instruction in regards to your watercolors. Can you talk a little bit about that and maybe how that can become a new form of outreach for people wanting to learn?
For sure. A lot of the students that I've spoken with are surprisingly unaware of sort of the option to leverage their art and their making for licensing purposes. In fashion, specifically, the patterns, that lovely floral pattern that Tanya has on her blouse, had to be developed, by an artist, and those prints are sold outright, and there's a pricing structure involved, and not a lot of that is taught. I honestly wish that I was more aware of that option for my art, and so I recently started a series of watercolor prints, some of which that have already been licensed by one textile company. And so they print fabric and make the fabric available to the consumer. And it's simply my surface pattern that is used. And so that, for me, is a way to educate and make others aware that a print studio can go beyond, the simple, print making element. You can create the prints and make them available. And I really, really hope that Detroit can be a source, a place where more print and pattern designers are, trained. So I am now working on getting those original prints on my website, because wall art is in demand. People are looking at their walls more. Original prints are just the thing. So yeah, that has been somewhat of a pivot of mine, but you can make that print last, and yeah, it can be applied to a number of different products. So yeah, that's my passion. I want to make more people aware of that.
So along those lines, do you plan on implementing any long-term changes in the way that you make this product, Shayla, based on what you've kind of gone through the last couple months, or put you on the spot?
Well, my process so far has just been involving myself and one or two cut and sew individual, partners. Like, this is one person who has a machine, and so I can outsource my production of the pillows and bags. We share that. I am sewing right along with them. So the change that I've implemented more recently has been just involving my student assistant with more cutting of the fabric and streamlining all of that. So she cuts, and we have more of the pieces ready to go to be assembled on my end. It sounds small, but it's a big difference for me as we start prepping for Christmas production.
So crazy, we're already talking about Christmas production.
Yeah, I know.
Heads up. Tanya, do you have anything to add to that? I mean, I feel like maybe this is a little bit redundant, but again, like long-term changes in the way that people produce product. I know that there's an inkling to move more locally, but do you see any sort of immediate changes that people will implement? Are people looking like intentionally to source closer? Is it a matter of people trying to maybe make up what they lost in their bottom line, so they're trying to find cheaper fabrics? Have you noticed any differences between the beginning of all of this, the onset of all this, and now in terms of the demands of this, the manufacturing world?
I mean, other than, getting the consumer to move away from the fast fashion, excuse me, and more to the on-demand customizable products in order to onshore and, have a localized supply chain, I would say not necessarily, but I'm not in the thick of it like some of our cut and sew experts are.
Okay. And then let's see. I feel like this has gone by so quickly that I'm like, did I ask everything? Let me go through my papers, because we're just like nailing it. And so the last question that Andrea had posed that we had kind of discussed was, if you could see into a crystal ball, how would you predict the fashion and textile industries, or how do you predict the fashion and textile industries will change as a direct result of this? I think we've all kind of touched on this at this point, but any final observations, remarks, shifts, things that you, your fortune-telling selves would see?
So I believe and am very hopeful that we can start to localize the supply chain to see more tech and automation that will help, like I mentioned, to cut down on the waste and a more direct-to-consumer market. We've got some great examples, here in Detroit with Pingree and Detroit Denim. My hopes are that the U.S. will focus on reshoring and the resiliency through, diversifying our supply chain. So we have an amazing opportunity here that I really hope that we kind of focus our efforts on to attract businesses here that can produce the kind of product that the cut and sew industry needs.
Shayla, anything to add?
Well, I know we've been a part of a big network. I've just sort of been in and out of awareness of sort of the progress and efforts that ISIC has done. So I'm excited about that. I'm not sure if you're aware of the, Build a Nest, which is a partnership with West Elm, and I think there are a few others involved, like Makewell, here locally, where we're really just trying to equip makers and talk about some of the hurdles that we're encountering, like small batch production and just not being able to afford a lot of these minimums. So even grants, and things, making those available. Just really looking, I'm seeing more of that. It's a big trend as we all sort of learn what our needs are and can help each other.
All right. Well, got 3 efficient women here, so it looks like that wraps it up. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this, and then I guess we'll pass it back to Andrea.
Okay. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. And yeah, just keep doing the good work. You know, it's all just, everything's up in the air. No one quite knows what's going on as all the states and countries fluctuate between opening, not opening. And like Shayla and I were talking about at the beginning, getting back to artists, makers, getting back to the studios, not being able to have the right tools. We're just kind of figuring it out as we go. But you know, what we are seeing is that this COVID-19 pandemic is affecting every part of our society. I mean, really how we live our lives. And, you know, but what it has done is exposed the supply chain and all the challenges and inequities, which could be a very good thing. And hopefully it is moving us back to, at least in America, made in American, and supporting our local makers. And it is that thought of changing people's emotions so that they pay more for product, because the fast fashion has really moved us into the state of cheap, fast throwaway, which is extremely dangerous, not just for climate change and for our environment, but also just for the people who make. And so again, thank you so much for participating in what Lester said, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.